The gleaming medical deck of the Galactic Consortium flagship Aurelia was a marvel of advanced technology. Pristine instrument bays lined the walls. Sterile holodisplays projected vital signs in the air, and the soft hum of neural repair nanites filled the space with a gentle, reassuring sound. Dr. Selene stood at the center of it all, her slender, Valorian frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. As the flagship's celebrated xenomedical surgeon, she'd built her reputation on mastery of biosynthetic tissue regenerators and neural repair nanites. Today, however, her four-chambered heart raced with unease. The Aurelia had docked at the Terran Alliance orbital station above war-torn planet Archer 9, and something about the mission briefing hadn't sat right with her. "You seem troubled, Selene," said Dr. Patrick, his tall, multi-limbed Syrian body folding gracefully as he approached. The xenopathologist's compound eyes reflected the blue light of the medical displays. "I've never worked with Terrans before," Selene admitted, adjusting the settings on her neural regenerator. "Their protocols are different." Dr. Ishima, the Aurelian immunologist, joined them, her amphibious skin glistening under the lights. "I've prepared standard immunomodulators for all known Arcor 9 pathogens, though I worry about stability in field conditions." The final member of their team, Dr. Jarek, ducked through the doorway, his massive Thraxian frame, reinforced with natural exoskeletal plates, made him perfect for osteo-repair specialization. "The briefing begins in 10 minutes, he rumbled. "Admiral Hayes himself will address us." As they made their way to the briefing room, Selene caught glimpses through the viewports of the battered soldiers awaiting evacuation from the planet below. The stark contrast between Aurelia's sterile perfection and the mud-caked uniforms of the wounded was jarring. Admiral Hayes, a grizzled human with a face weathered by countless battles, stood before a holographic display of Arcor 9's surface. "Doctors," he began without preamble, "your expertise is needed planetside. You'll be deploying directly to a forward-edge mobile treatment tent." "A tent?" Patrick's voice rose with concern. "Surely you mean a Terran medical ship?" Hayes shook his head. "Negative. You'll ride in a drop pod to the surface, then work in our primary field hospital, Canvas Med Station Alpha." Selene's heart sank as the hologram shifted to show a large olive-drab canvas structure, scarred by blast marks and surrounded by wounded soldiers lying on tarps. This was nothing like the hollow surgery theaters she was accustomed to. "What about our equipment?" Ishima asked, her gill slits flaring with anxiety. "Pack only what you can carry," Hayes replied. "The drop pod has limited space, and you'll need to move quickly once planetside. Standard Terran Medpack 1 kits will be provided." Selene exchanged alarmed glances with her colleagues. Medpack 1 kits were primitive by Galactic Consortium standards. Chemical adhesives instead of nanoinfusers. Plasma cautery irons instead of biosynthetic regenerators. "Admiral," she began carefully, "our procedures require—" "Your procedures require adaptation, Dr. Selene." Hayes cut her off. "This isn't a research hospital. It's a battlefield. Deployment is in 30 minutes. Dismissed." As they returned to the medical deck to prepare, a heated debate erupted among the Valorian medics. "We should bring the neural regenerator," Jarek insisted, his bone plates clicking in agitation. "Terran conditions can't possibly be that primitive." "Did you see the tent?" Patrick countered. "It looked like it was held together with adhesive and hope." Ishima methodically packed a small case of immunomodding serums. "I'm concerned about contamination. Without proper sterilization fields." "We follow orders," Selene interrupted, though her own doubts ran deep. "Pack essential tools only. We adapt." Despite her words, she couldn't shake the fear that her patients would suffer irreparable harm without proper equipment. The drop pod was even more cramped than Selene had imagined. The 4 alien medics squeezed inside alongside their minimal gear, knees pressed against metal walls. As the pod launched from Aurelia, the raw 4G acceleration pressed Selene back into her seat. Valorian physiology wasn't designed for such rapid gravity changes, and she fought the darkness creeping at the edges of her vision. "Atmospheric entry in 10 seconds," the automated voice announced. The pod began to shake violently as heat shields engaged. The groaning of metal under stress filled Selen's ears, drowning out Ishima's worried muttering. When the pod finally crashed to the surface of Arcor 9, Selen's internal organs felt rearranged. She unstrapped herself with trembling fingers and pushed open the hatch, immediately assaulted by the acrid smell of smoke and the metallic tang of blood. They had landed in a muddy, crater-pocked clearing. The treatment tent, an enormous olive-drab canvas structure marred by scorch marks, stood in the center, surrounded by wounded soldiers lying on tarps. Red skies swirled overhead, and the distant rumble of artillery vibrated through the ground. Patrick emerged from the pod and immediately recoiled as a spattering of blood hit his boots. A wounded Terran soldier was being carried past, crimson liquid pooling beneath the stretcher. "Consortium medics?" A harried human in blood-stained scrubs approached. "I'm Dr. Morrison, Chief Surgeon. Follow me. We've got 3 minutes before the next wave of casualties arrives." He led them toward the tent, its canvas flaps flapping in a breeze that carried the stench of cauterized flesh and infection. Ishima's compound eyes dilated in panic, while Jarek's bone-reinforced spine visibly tensed in revulsion. Only Selen forced herself forward, though every instinct screamed to retreat to the sterile safety of the Aurelia. Inside the tent was a scene from a nightmare. Rows of triage stations were crowded with torn uniforms, splinted limbs, primitive gas-burned cautery plates, and manual bone saws. Human surgeons moved with frantic efficiency, their hands and arms coated in blood up to the elbows. "Next, stabilize the blast victims!" Morrison shouted over the cacophony of moans and urgent medical chatter. Patrick took one look at a human surgeon, manually sawing through a soldier's infected leg, and crumpled to the ground unconscious. Ishima followed suit moments later, when a spray of arterial blood arced across her field of vision. Even Jarek, with his hardened Thraxian constitution, swayed dangerously before his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed beside his colleagues. Selen remained standing, but only through sheer willpower. Her body trembled with horror as she watched a human medic use a crude plasma iron to cauterize a gaping chest wound, the smell of burning flesh making her gag. "Your people aren't used to this, I take it," Morrison said, his tone somewhere between amusement and frustration. "This is barbaric," Selen managed, her voice barely audible. "Where are the nanite triage units? The sterile autoscalpels? You're using manual closure techniques." Morrison's expression hardened. "Every second I waste on perfect sterilization is a soldier who bleeds out. Welcome to war, Doctor. Now either help us or get back on your ship." He knelt beside Patrick, slapping the Syrian's face lightly until his compound eyes fluttered open. "On your feet. There's work to do." As Selen helped rouse her colleagues, she forced herself to take deep, meditative breaths. Her species had evolved complex breathing patterns to regulate emotional responses, and she needed every ounce of control now. "Focus on our goal," she whispered to the others as they regained consciousness. "We're here to keep them alive. Nothing else matters." Morrison returned with 4 standard-issue Medpack 1 kits, thrusting one into each alien medic's hands. "Red tags are critical. Yellow are urgent but stable. Green can wait. Begin with the reds." Inside, each kit was a crude assortment of tools: chemical adhesive tubes, basic sutures, plasma cautery irons, and pain management injectors. Nothing even remotely resembling the advanced equipment they were accustomed to. "I'll demonstrate basic procedures," Morrison said, leading them to different stations. "You'll catch on quick or they'll die. Simple as that." At the amputation station, Jarek watched with a mixture of fascination and revulsion as Morrison aligned bone fragments manually before cauterizing with a handheld plasma iron. Without exoskeletal bone grow nanite swarms, How do you ensure proper alignment? Jarek asked, his massive hands shaking slightly. Feel it, Morrison replied, guiding Jarek's fingers to the broken bone. The body knows how it should fit together. Listen to it. At the wound closure station, Selene practiced gauging chemical adhesive flow under Patrick's watchful eye. His Syrian precision pointer helped her avoid gluing her gloved fingers together. But it was messy, imprecise work compared to the nano-infusers she was accustomed to. Too much and you suffocate the tissue, Patrick muttered. Too little and it reopens. This is archaic. Ishima struggled at the infection control station, her hands hesitating over various antibiotic gels. Without my advanced immunomodding serums, how can I be certain of efficacy against alien bacteria? She asked the Terran, supervising her. You can't, came the blunt reply. You make your best guess and adjust if they get worse. At the shock stabilization station, the team learned to set up primitive IV drips, using saline infusions heated over a field burner. The Terran nurse showed them how to find veins by feel, rather than scanner, a technique that left Selene feeling clumsy and inadequate. Their failures and small victories built tension throughout the day. Ishima nearly poisoned a patient with the wrong antibiotic dosage, but corrected herself at the last minute. Jarek hyperventilated under Arcor 9's 1.3G gravity as he held a leg steady for amputation. Patrick's xenopathology scanners malfunctioned in the mud, forcing him to rely on bare hands palpation, something his Syrian medical training had never prepared him for. You're overthinking this, Morrison snapped at Selene as she meticulously prepared a chemical adhesive application. Stop wasting time on protocols. Look at the soldier's vitals. Stop the bleeding now. These protocols exist for a reason, Selene defended herself, even as she picked up her pace. Proper technique prevents secondary infection and tissue necrosis. And while you're preventing theoretical complications, your patient is bleeding out. Morrison countered. You're endangering lives with fancy tech talk when simple pressure and adhesive would solve the problem. Their argument was interrupted by a piercing shriek as a Thraxian ally soldier was carried in with a ruptured abdominal wound. Jarek immediately pushed past Morrison, drawn by instinctive empathy for his own kind. I need space, he bellowed, his medical training overriding his earlier revulsion. He worked with surprising speed, using the crude Terran tools with newfound confidence. Morrison watched, then nodded with grudging respect. Good. You're learning. As the day wore on, a tentative trust began to form between the alien doctors and their human counterparts. They were all physicians, after all, bound by the same fundamental oath to heal and protect life, regardless of their methods. Just as they were finding their rhythm, a siren wailed outside the tent. Mass casualty incoming, someone shouted. Multiple blasts at the eastern perimeter. The tent erupted in a new level of chaos as dozens of fresh casualties poured in. Terran infantry with blast injuries, 2 massive Wolverine shock troopers with chemical burns, and a Thraxian mech pilot whose body was riddled with shrapnel. Power's fluctuating, a technician called out. X-ray drones offline. The earthy fluorescent lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across blood-splattered surfaces. Selene found herself instinctively taking command of one triage line, her voice rising above the pandemonium. Red tag to Table 3, Jarek. Clamp that vessel before it seeps out. Patrick, we need immediate pathogen screening on the Wolverine burns. Ishima, working nearby, suddenly froze over a wounded soldier. Xenothraxian virus marker in the blood. It's spreading through open wounds. Without her advanced equipment, she had no way to isolate and identify the specific strain. In a moment of desperate improvisation, she mixed a sterilant from field reagents, ignoring her ethical protocols about first testing. This might sting, she warned the soldier before applying the mixture. To her relief, the telltale purple infection markers began to recede. Across the tent, Patrick found himself confronting Morrison over a critically infected soldier. He needs nanite therapy, Patrick insisted, pointing to the rapidly spreading necrosis. We don't have time for experimental treatments, Morrison shot back. Standard debridement and antibiotics are our only option. The soldier moaned, clutching Patrick's arm. Please, do something. It burns. Patrick's compound eyes narrowed in determination. Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew a smuggled micronanite sprayer, a device no larger than his thumb that he'd hidden from the inspection. Turn away, he told Morrison. I'll take responsibility for whatever happens. To his surprise, Morrison simply nodded and stepped back, allowing him space to work. The micronanites efficiently debrided the infection, leaving healthy tissue untouched. The soldier's breathing steadied almost immediately, his face relaxing in relief. Morrison stared at the results, then gave Patrick a curt nod. Next time, tell me what you're planning before you do it. Meanwhile, Selen found Jarek in a darkened corner of the tent, his massive frame hunched over in apparent distress. I'm ashamed, he confessed when she approached. On my world, we would never use such crude methods. And yet, I can't watch them die. Selen placed a hand on his bone-plated shoulder. Our protocols must bend if we are to serve here. There is no shame in adaptation. They shared a quiet vow to continue, to use whatever tools were available to preserve life, no matter how primitive or unrefined those tools might be. Their resolve was immediately tested when a critically wounded composite Thraxian-Valorian hybrid pilot was brought in. His vital signs were barely registering, internal bleeding threatening to claim him within minutes. He needs a Valorian region capsule, Selen said automatically, then stopped herself. Which we don't have. Morrison looked at her expectantly. Any alternatives? Selen's mind raced. A standard Valorian would respond to basic Terran treatments, as would a standard Thraxian, but a hybrid's unique physiology complicated matters exponentially. I might be able to improvise a field region protocol, she said slowly. I need a power source and components from my medkit. Morrison didn't hesitate. Whatever you need. Selen quickly stripped the CPU from her medkit's docking station and linked it to Terran battery cells. The makeshift device was crude, nothing like the elegant region capsules on Aurelia, but it might be enough to stabilize the pilot's unique physiology. Jarek held the pilot's hand as Patrick calibrated the prototype Regan sequence. Ishima monitored oxygen saturation, her gills flaring with concentration. Morrison watched tensely as the device began to overheat, sparks flying from improvised connections. "Release tracer!" Patrick yelled as the capacitor threatened to overload. Selen pressed the activation control, and a green biolight flared, spreading nanovectors into the pilot's bloodstream. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, impossibly, the pilot's vitals began to stabilize. Color returned to his ashen cheeks as the hybrid cardiovascular system responded to the makeshift treatment. Selen collapsed into a nearby chair, tears of relief streaming down her face. The tent had fallen silent around them, all eyes on the miracle they'd just witnessed. You saved him, Morrison said quietly, with a battery and spare parts. As the night wore on, the tent gradually quieted. The line of critical patients shortened. The urgent cases were stabilized. Those with minor injuries shuffled out to recovery modules. Selen and her team worked until their limbs ached and their vision blurred with fatigue. When the last patient had been treated, Morrison gathered the Valorian medics for a debriefing. You saved a lot of lives today, he said, his earlier gruffness softened by respect. I underestimated your methods. He reached into his pocket and handed Selen a Terran field insignia, a simple patch bearing the Medical Corps emblem. You've earned this. Selen accepted it with a tired smile. And I underestimated yours. The improvised region protocol was carefully dismantled. Selen, salvaging the CPU core to share with her homeworld scientists. The hybrid pilot, now stable, was evacuated to a proper medical ship in orbit. Outside the tent, under the dimming red sky of Arcor 9, Selene and her colleagues wiped grime from their faces. They were battered, exhausted, but oddly triumphant. "I learned something today," Patrick admitted, his usual pristine appearance now marred by mud and blood. "Sometimes the fastest tool is not the fanciest one." Ishima nodded, her amphibian skin dry and cracking from the day's stress. "The Terran's tolerance for suboptimal conditions is remarkable. I find myself respecting their resilience. I'll never again judge a primitive technique until I've seen it save a life," Jarek added, flexing his massive hands, now steady and sure where they had trembled before. The tent canvas flapped in the evening breeze. Blood dried into mud tracks at its entrance, a stark reminder of what they had faced and overcome. The next morning, the Valorian delegation boarded a Terran transport, headed back to the orbital station. As they departed the surface, Selene looked back at the canvas tent, now just a tiny speck in the war-torn landscape. Aboard the Aurelia once more, Selene uploaded raw field data, videos of makeshift surgeries and plasma cautery usage, to the medical archive. Her final log entry was simple, but profound. "In the crucible of war, we found that compassion and adaptability override protocol. Our species' doctrines will evolve." Though each medic returned to their home systems with renewed technology and techniques, they all carried the memory of that canvas tent, the place where they had learned that life's preservation sometimes required letting go of perfection. The abandoned tent stood silent at dawn, empty, except for the soft ripple of canvas in the wind. Its stains of mud and blood remained as testament to lives saved under the most primal of medical circumstances. A bridge between worlds, built on shared purpose. 6 months later, Selene stood in her pristine laboratory aboard the Aurelia, watching a holographic simulation of field-expedient surgical techniques. The new curriculum for Valorian medical cadets included modules on primitive condition adaptation and resource-limited interventions, terms that would have been unthinkable before her experience on Arcor 9. A communication alert chimed softly. "Incoming transmission from Terran Alliance Medical Corps," the system announced. Selene accepted the call, and Dr. Morrison's face appeared, his features less haggard than she remembered. "Dr. Selene," he greeted her with a rare smile. "Your improved field region protocol has been implemented in 17 forward medical stations. Survival rates are up 38%. And your modified plasma cautery technique has been adopted by 3 consortium species," she replied. "It seems we continue to learn from each other." Morrison nodded. "The Galactic Medical Exchange Program has been approved. We're sending 20 human surgeons to train aboard consortium vessels. And we'll send 20 specialists to your field hospitals," Selene confirmed. "Though I've warned them about the smell." They shared a moment of understanding that transcended their different worlds and methods. "The hybrid pilot you saved," Morrison said. "He's been asking to meet you. He's training as a medic now. Tell him I look forward to working alongside him someday." Selene replied, "In a tent or a starship, wherever healing is needed." After the transmission ended, Selene returned to her simulation. She picked up a crude Terran scalpel, an actual physical blade, rather than a molecular separator, and began practicing the techniques she had once considered barbaric. Her hands moved with newfound confidence, combining precision with pragmatism. In the aftermath of that bloody day in a canvas tent, something fundamental had changed in galactic medicine. The Valorians had learned that sometimes the most sophisticated healing came not from advanced technology, but from the willingness to adapt, to improvise, and to never give up on a patient, no matter how primitive the tools at hand. And on distant battlefields across the galaxy, canvas tents continued to flap in alien winds, their interiors now staffed by mixed teams of human and non-human medics, each learning from the other in the universal pursuit of preserving life, one heartbeat at a time. Outside the Terran Alliance headquarters on Earth, a new monument had been erected, a simple bronze sculpture of an alien hand and a human hand, joined in healing a wound. The plaque beneath it bore words in multiple languages, but the message was the same in all of them. In the crucible of necessity, we found our common purpose. For Dr. Selin, these words had become more than a platitude. They were the foundation of a new approach to medicine that spanned species and methodologies, proving that compassion was perhaps the most advanced technology of all. On the anniversary of that fateful day on Arcor 9, medics across the galaxy, human and alien alike, observed a moment of silence, reflecting on the lessons learned in a blood-stained canvas tent, where different worlds had come together in the most fundamental of missions: to heal, to save, and to serve life in all its forms. And somewhere on a distant battlefield, a new generation of medical personnel unfolded another canvas tent, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them with technology, both advanced and primitive. United by the knowledge that in medicine, as in life, adaptation was not merely a skill but a sacred duty.